Gone. All right, cool. So, Jesse, thank you first and foremost for being here. I am super excited. We had such a good phone call, and I like you could be doing anything right now, but you number one, you chose to be here, and number two, it looks beautiful outside. Like I mentioned, I'm a little jealous. Famous enough, exactly. So, um, yeah, man. Like I just want to first start off with like, thank you for being here and doing this with me.
You're so welcome. I thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for connecting. I absolutely love this. I love what you're doing. I love being able to talk to people and kind of share again what we're doing. And this is how we grow, right? This is how we learn about what actually is going on in the world and with other people and all of these things. So this is amazing.
I love it. All right, so if we were to jump right into it, when you think of your faith journey and what all that encompasses,
Mhm.
what would you say is the beginning of your faith journey, and were you raised inside or outside of the church?
So my faith journey really started when I was pretty young. I came from, or I came from, uh, I come from an abusive home, and so my upbringing was one of a lot of fear and anxiety and probably a touch of a few other things. And so I found the church. My family actually found the church when I was pretty young, and I will always remember going in and feeling just welcomed and feeling like I was safe, and feeling like that was a place that there was something that I just couldn't describe, and I just wanted to go back. And so when my parents ended up getting a divorce, and we went to go my dad got custody of us, which at the time was probably, like, in my mind, one of the worst things that could have ever happened, because he was my abuser. And so we actually then went to go live with my grandparents. So he moved in, so we all kind of moved in together, and that was the most amazing thing that could have happened, because for me, my grandfather became kind of like my dad, and he took me under his wing. He's the one that really talked to me about faith and what it meant and who Jesus was. And really, I was able to see for the very first time what it meant to be a dad, what it meant to love your kids, what it meant to have a stable home, what it meant to represent um, uh, not only your faith, but who Jesus was inside of you. And that changed so many things for me. And I use that as an example um, all of the time. And so for me, that's where that started. And that's where I got plugged into the church, right? And everything after that started to just open up.
All right, cool. So, some of the tests in your testimony sounds like it probably has to do with your family a lot, and then maybe a positive note being with your grandfather and whatnot. What about those things are you comfortable sharing with us? Let's dive into that.
Oh, I'm an open book. So you ask anything you want to know.
All right, so like specifically, what's a memory of that time frame that you remember?
Oh
That we can
goodness.
put our feet in your shoes.
Oh yeah. So I will never forget. As a child when that suffered abuse, those a lot of those things are just they're burned into your mind, like they're burned into your memory. You'll just never forget them. I can remember sights, sounds, smells. You know what I mean? Like everything, all of the pieces. And I remember one time specifically, I was little. I think I was probably 6 or 7, and we were watching a TV program, and I found something funny in whatever it was that was on the show, and I started laughing. And I remember all of a sudden, like, just laughing. As a kid, you're like, oh, ha 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 ha, right? And you turn around, and instantly I got hit, and it was for no other reason. And again, and at that point in time, I had been hit so much that every time I got hit, my nose would bleed. And it was just it was instant, right? And I remember getting up and running to the bathroom and stuff like that. And this one particular time, it wouldn't stop. Like there was nothing that we could do to get it to stop. And I remember looking up at one point in time at my mom and looking in her eyes and seeing actual fear, like seeing her afraid because she didn't know what to do. And at that point in time, that's when I, you know what I mean? It was like, uh-oh, this is serious. And I'll never forget that. For me, changed a lot of things. Like that was the probably one of the first times when I can remember myself feeling this isn't normal. Like, you know what I mean? Like this isn't right. This isn't how we should treat people. This isn't what we should do. Oh, you mean this isn't like everybody doesn't go through this? So for me, that's probably the biggest thing. And I can look back on that now and I can see so many pieces of where God showed up, right? And how he showed up to keep us safe or keep us protected. And while I know now that that was never his intention, right? For my family, for our journey. And that was a decision, right? That somebody else that my dad made. I know that all of those things that I have gone through and all of that, the trauma, like the hurt, all of the pain, all of those things was for a purpose. And I have been able to use all of that to connect to people that I would never have been able to have a conversation with. You know what I mean? They'll mention something and I'm like, I completely understand. Yeah, me too. I was here and this is what happened to me. And I feel like because of that, right? Because of that connection, I can share how it transformed me and how God used it to bring me closer, right? To do all of those things. And now as a dad, okay? So now as a dad, if I had a fear when I became a father, it was that. It was, I did not want to become the model, right, that I had. And I remember like crying and praying, right? And just being like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And looking into the word and finding all of the scriptures about like a good father, right? And it was like, I want this. This is the example that I want. And it was instantly, my grandfather came into my mind, and it was instantly like, I've positioned these people, right, around you so that because you didn't have an example of what a good father was as a child, but I've positioned people around you so you have an example of what a good father is in your life. And it was, oh, you're right. You're right.
So, Jesse, what happened that night that you just wouldn't stop bleeding? Like your mom didn't know what to do. She's full of fear. What happened?
Yeah, I think that was the breaking point for her too. Because it wasn't long after that we had moved to a different house. So we were like living in this little like basement apartment. And we had moved to a bigger house in like a different part of town. And we were not there very long. I don't think we were there very long. And my mom had just kind of finally had enough and made a decision to leave. And I will never forget that day. We helped her pack her car. Like, we were kids. We had no idea. So it was me and my sister. We had no idea what's going on. And she hugs us and kisses us and she's crying. And she's like, I don't want to do this, but I have to leave. And we were like, okay, it's like, okay, we'll see you, we'll see you when you get back, kind of a thing. You're kids, you have no idea what's going on. And I didn't realize that watching her drive away was going to be the last time that I saw her in quite a little bit. And like I said, that was kind of that. I feel like that moment was kind of the breaking point. And again, in my mind as a kid, it probably wasn't. There were probably other things that were happening and going on. And I think if we sat and like watched the whole timeline, do you know what I mean? We could probably piece together a couple of other things. But I think for me, that was probably how I connected it in my mind. And really, I feel like it was kind of the launching point for not only that divorce and separation, but the fact, right? So the fact of my life changed and actually got better, which is weird to say. but it did, you know what I mean? It got better. There were doors that were opened then that would not have been opened before.
Definitely. Definitely. So I want to pivot just a quick bit and then we'll get back on track with some of the main questions. But
Yeah.
you mentioned this idea of being a dad and having a certain fear of being a dad. And talk to me about where you feel like you are now concerning what's your vision of being a dad?
Oh my gosh, such a good question. Okay. So there's that old saying, maybe it's not that old, but I've heard it a lot, right? Hurt people hurt people. And
I say that all the time. All the time.
it's a real thing. No, it's
Yeah.
a real thing, right? And so hurt people hurt people. And I will tell it to you like this. You think that you have dealt with all of your stuff. You think that you've unpacked it and you're good, and like, I've dealt with it, I'm good, I don't want to talk about it, like it's all good. That feeling right there of I dealt with it, I'm good, I don't want to talk about it, is the first understanding that you should probably have, that you don't have it, right? You need to talk about it, and it's not good. And so I really had to do some hard things, right? And square with a lot of things and forgive, not for the sake of my relationship with my dad, but for the sake of my relationship with my heavenly Father, and for me. I had to forgive for me. I didn't realize I was carrying around all of that stuff, dragging it around, like with like this old trunk. Do you know what I mean? That was like ugly and moss covered, and I've been carrying it around for years through everything that I'd gone through. I was dragging this big thing with me, and you don't realize it. And I remember when I found out I was going to become a dad, and feeling this immediate sense of I do not want from my kids what it is that I had. How can I be different? How can I break this cycle? How can I make sure that my children and their children and their children's children never have to experience what I had to experience? And so that's what I did. I set out on that mission to make sure that I was never that person. And I unhealthily, right, did it to a fault. I became almost uber passive, right? It was like, nothing affects me, like I'm really good, like not a big deal. And internally, I'm like, you're just like, you're freaking out because it's unhealthy, right? Stuff affects you. And we have to be able to have that conversation. And so it wasn't until I found some people, I got healthy, right? And I did some really deep, some hard work, and I was able to unpack some of that stuff, able to forgive, able to really get to the root of why I do certain things or why I had done certain things. And ultimately it led me to this place of wanting to be better and being better. And so I had all girls up until I had my son. And when I had my son, it was the weirdest thing, because he is so much like me. And I can remember we were sitting not that long ago watching a movie, and he laughed almost identically. Okay. It was the weirdest, not deja vu, but do you know what I mean? It was the weirdest moment. It was so surreal. It was like I was out of body. It was like watching it, but being present at the same time. I can't explain it. And it was like a parallel movie was running. It was the movie of myself, okay, as a child in the same situation. And it was me and my son in the same situation, and they were running concurrently over, like, at the same time. And I remember then seeing what happened to me when I laughed, right? The story that I told you earlier. And I remember reaching over and grabbing my son and picking him up and bringing him in and giving him this just big hug. And he wraps his, he wraps his arm around my neck, right? You know what I mean? Like this, wraps his arm around my neck, and he whispers in my ear and he's like, "I love you, Dad." And that broke something in me. And Ariel, we're watching, like, it was a funny movie. Do you know what I mean? Like it was funny. It was, whatever it was. I don't even remember. It doesn't matter. And I remember that broke something in me that I didn't know I was still holding on to. Right? I had no idea I was still holding on to that. And it was like
That's
this,
so powerful.
right? It was this last little piece of something that I needed to break off, that I needed to be free of. And it, yeah.
Talk about a gift, man.
Oh my gosh. Oh yes. Oh, my prayer that night, I was a sobby hot mess. Oh my gosh, I was a sobby hot mess. It was like, thank you, Lord. It was like, thank you, Lord, for what you just did. I know I needed it. I had no idea. I am forever grateful for you, for you being a good father and knowing what I need beyond what I know that I need. And it just being there. It just being there.
Right.
Yep.
This is no other way other than a God thing. 100%. Man, that's beautiful though.
No other way.
That's beautiful. Okay, so Jesse, I still want to give space if you want it. Is there any other text in your testimony that you'd like to bring up before we pivot?
What's interesting is that, so when my parents got a divorce, I always said, like, I never want to have one. I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to have a divorce. I'm not going to be like that. And what ended up happening is my first marriage, it ended in divorce. And there was some infidelity that happened, and there was a bunch of other things. And I struggled a lot with that, because it was like, I felt like I failed. I felt like I failed my kids at the time. I felt like I failed, this standard that I had, right? And it wasn't until I got some help that I realized, oh, you know what? There are two people in this relationship. It's not just me. And it wasn't on me completely to carry the burden of faithfulness. And it wasn't completely on me, right, to carry this understanding of, I need to be in this 100%, right? Not a 50-50 marriage. It's an all in, right? It's an all in. And it wasn't just on me to do that. And that piece was really important for me in my next relationship, right? And for my now wife, because had I not had some of those experiences afterwards and been able to take space and really, like, get healthy and do all of the, like, again, a lot of hard work after that relationship ended, I would not have the marriage that I have today, because my wife is absolutely amazing. She is an absolute angel. And I would not be able to honor her in the way in which that I need to, and the way in which she should be honored, if I had not actually gotten healthy and been able to, like, be healed and really do that, like I said, do that hard work. And so for me, I feel like that's kind of a staple, is, like, again, when hard things happen and bad things happen in our life, we need to make sure that we're doing that. We're taking that time and we're doing the hard work, because if we're not, we're really just perpetuating, I feel like, what's going to happen later on, because it all comes out in the wash at some point in time.
Super true. Super true. You mentioned earlier, you said hurt people, and I say that all the time, but I say hurt people, and healed people like to heal people.
I'm stealing it.
Okay.
Ariel, I'm stealing it.
Go for it.
Brilliant. It's so good.
Yeah. So speaking of which, let's pivot to kind of some of the happier stuff. So you said, like, you're like absolutely in love with your wife. You had great memories with your grandfather. Tell me some of the happier stuff. Bring me into some of those moments as well.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I will never forget. So my grandfather, he's the one that taught me like what hard work was all about. He was the guy that like went to his job and worked hard, right? Worked hard for his family and then came home and did the same thing. He would come home and he was always baking something. So he was a cook in the Korean War, and he was always baking something. I don't know if I ever remember a time when I think about him that he isn't baking something. And I don't ever remember him using a cookbook. Do you know what I mean? Like, he was this guy that would make anything from scratch. And he made the most amazing date-filled cookies. I can't really describe them other than they were superb. And I don't know that he ever used a recipe. Do you know what I mean? And so I remember him always being in the kitchen and always serving his family and always giving, and everything he did with like a grateful heart. I don't ever remember like, and I'm sure he did, right? But I don't ever remember him being like angry. I don't ever remember him being combative. Do you know what I mean? I don't ever remember him being like that. And he was like 6'2", 6'3", you know, he was a big guy. His name was Alfred. Oh my gosh, never forget that. He always had like, he was the guy that like you could go curl up. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'd sit on the couch next to grandpa and you would curl up and you'd be asleep in like 30 seconds. Do you know what I mean? Because you were just like, oh, it's the best place ever. and he was like, kids, you know, climb up in his lap. Loved it. Never was like, get off of me, you know. Oh my gosh.
So
And
in a way, a big old Santa Claus, because you mentioned cookies and you mentioned big guy that like loves kids.
oh my gosh, 1,000%. I just put that together. Yep, 1,000%. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He taught me again, and he was the guy that was like, taught me how to mow the lawn. Do you know what I mean? And taught me how to like trim hedges. And he had a garden, and we would go pick strawberries in his garden that he had in the back of the house. So that for me was like, it's stuff that I hang on to forever. His favorite song was On the Wings of a Snow White Dove. And so the one of the very first tattoos that I ever got was that. And it's again, the symbolism of I'm right-handed. So every time I'm doing something, every time I put my hand to something, right, his memory is there. And so for me, I look at that and it's like, everything that I'm doing, I want to make sure that I always bring honor to his memory, because it was so what I needed, right? And I just want to make sure that I'm doing right
All I can feel
by what he gave
the
me.
amount of gratitude and respect and the love that you have for this man. I can only imagine what it was like to actually be able to experience that. Hey,
Oh,
tell
he
me
was
about your
amazing.
wife, because you went through this divorce and everything, but I'm excited to hear about her too.
Oh, she is probably one of the most spectacular humans I have ever come into contact with. So when we were dating, I remember it was really early on, and I said, okay, I need like 30 minutes of your time. And she's like, okay, you know, like whatever, cool. And I said, and I'm going to talk for like probably 30 minutes. All right. And I'm going to tell you absolutely everything that has gone on, that is going on in my life, and everything. And at the end of that conversation, if you still want to continue this relationship, you still want to do this, I'm all in. I want you to know that. I said, I feel really strongly about this, about who you are, about where this could go. And I want that, but I don't want you to be blindsided, right? So all of this. And so I did. And so for 30 minutes, I literally like, like it just, all of it came out. It was probably ugly. It was all disjointed. I'm sure my thoughts were all over the place. And, and at the end of it, I said, okay, I said, I'm done. I'm like, what do you think? And instantly, you know, like you're like waiting for a response and it's quiet. And I'm like, oh boy. Well, I was like, all right, well, that's the end of that. That was good. It was It was fun while it lasted. Great. Good job, Jesse. Way to ruin that one. And she's like, she goes, had anybody else said what you just said, she goes, I probably would have walked away. I would have said, thank you very much. Like, I appreciate your honesty and everything else like that. She's like, I probably would have walked away. She goes, if you would ask anybody, you would not have been my first choice. You would not have been. I told everybody, like, I never want this. I never want this. I never want this. I never want this. And she's like, but I am so, she goes, I'm so like in love with who you are and what you're doing and all of these things. And so for me at that point, it was like, boom, let's go. And so she just jumped in, right? Like, I'll tell you what, being a step parent is no joke. It is not for the faint of heart. And there are outlier stories of like great relationships, right, between people that are divorced, and all this stuff, and how they co-parent so well and everything else like that. That's not my story. I wish it was, right? But that's not my story. And she stepped into a role and took on responsibilities, okay, that she didn't ask for, that she didn't deserve. And it wasn't that she didn't deserve to be a mom, or she didn't to be any of that, but all of the garbage, right? All of the negativity, all of the name calling, all of the attacks, all of those stuff that she had to endure, that she was just here because she loved me, and she loved my family, loved my kids, and wanted to be a part of that, not to take over, right? Not to step on somebody's toes, not to do anything like that, but to really to really I don't even know, be connected to us. And so it
kind of sounds like maybe committed.
Oh, thank you. That's what it is. She is the most loving, warm, a most amazing person. She will do anything that she can for you, especially if you are like in her circle. Do you know what I mean? She is the most loyal person. She is the most honest person that I know. And she has this infectious just joy, but it's in this very like specific way, where she just has this warmth that when she walks into a room, it just kind of covers, right? It emanates out of her. And she probably would be like, that's not true. That's not how this is. I'm not like that. But she 1,000% is. She has this presence and this ability to talk to people, and this connection to the Holy Spirit. Oh my goodness. God talks to this woman in a way that I wish he talked to me. Okay. Can I be honest with you? Like, I am jealous. I am jealous of how he speaks to her, because goodness gracious, there are times where it's like, I feel like him and I have a 2x4 method kind of communication conversation, right? Where it's very much like, I get this, it's right here. It's just a big 2x4, and it kind of gets like right here. And it's like, hey, Jesse, are you listening? Are you awake? Hi, hello. It's not like that all the time, but a lot of times, right? It's big and it gets my attention. And and with her, it's like, it's this beautiful, I love watching it happen. It's this beautiful like ebb and flow of just this constant conversation, right? Where she is just so in tune with his voice and what she's hearing. And I will hear something and I'll be like so jazzed about it. I'll come bring it to her. And she was like, yeah, she's like, he's been talking to me. We've kind of been in this conversation for a little bit. And I was like, what do you mean? What? So what is that? Like, you didn't want to tell me? She's like, it wasn't the right time. Fine.
I can totally see that.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. It's
Totally
absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Her heart is is so much bigger than her body. And I love the way that she loves. I love the way that she loves her family. I love the way that she is would step in front of a moving bus. Do you know what I mean? Like for her kids. That is who she is. She is so self-sacrificing to a fault sometimes. And that's where that's where me, right, as her husband, kind of, I step in and I'm like, all right, babe, like, you need some me time. You need to take some time for you. Like, I love you and we love you, but I'm gonna run you a bath. You know what I mean? It's like you need some me time. You need this. We're gonna close the doors, okay? And I'm locking the bedroom door, and you're just in here until you're in here, okay? So when you want to come out, cool, you come out. I got everything else under control. Okay. If you hear banging, you hear screaming, you hear whatever it is, we might even take the kids. I might take the kids and we might go somewhere. Right. Don't worry about none of that. Don't worry about none of that. And that's why I'm like, maybe we'll just leave. We'll just leave. I'm taking her to the park. We're going to go here. We're going to go do whatever. We're out. We're out. I love you. Have a great time. Okay. If you need me, you text me and we're good.
Right. Yeah. I just, from my perspective, if I started hearing like the banging and the screaming and stuff, I'm so glad you're taking them somewhere. I'm so glad you're taking them somewhere. Most of the time, anyway.
Most of the time. Yeah, most of the time. Yeah. It doesn't happen. I would love to be like, yeah, all the time. I'm super observant like that. And I'm just like,
No,
oh, yeah,
okay.
that's what I would do. No. But again, we'll go upstairs. Do you know what I mean? We'll go upstairs or we'll play up there, or we'll do something like that. Or it's like, hey, you know what? You'll need to go get your hair done. Or yes, you need to go do that. Or you need to go get a massage. Or you just need to go, right? Like, go have coffee with some friends. Go
Right.
do something.
Right. I think that's awesome. That's really cool, man. So everything that we've really been talking about has been a lot of stuff in the past. But what are you up to today? And if people relate to you or they just want to get in contact with you, how do they do it?
Oh yeah. So my wife and I, a couple of years ago, we really just felt God speaking to us, and we really just were like, what is this? Like, what is this? This is different. And so we really just pressed in. We prayed a lot. We sought a lot of counsel. And because we just kept hearing Texas, right? We were like, Texas. It was everywhere. And we were like, what is this? And so we flew out to an area where we felt like this is where God was directing us. Very Caleb and Joshua, right? Like, you're going into the land of promise, right? But you're going into the land and you're like scouting it out. And it's like, I don't know what to expect. So we're going, right? This is where we heard we were supposed to go. This is what God said. So this is where we're going. And just feeling like, oh my gosh, whoa, what is going on here? We heard at that time, like, God just opened up this whole package of, I want you to start a business. I want it to be like this. I want it to look like this. This is what I want the foundation to be. This is what all this stuff. And so we started a business called Abide Leadership. And it's based on a scripture in John, right? John 15, where it says, I'm the vine, you are the branches, right? If you abide in me, right, I will abide in you. And I'm paraphrasing, but it's all about servant leadership. And so how do we build, right, good leaders? How do we build leaders that have a heart for service? How do we build leaders that see people as people, not as a number, not as a means to end of productivity, but as people? And so our goal and our mission really is to help change that culture, to transform culture, to help organizations and leaders, right, lead authentically with their faith and their vocation, right? Those two things tied together, so they're not separate. And it doesn't mean like, hey, I have to be a missionary in my business. I have to, like, have a Bible study and do all this stuff in my business, but I can lead with those same principles, right? And transform the organization that I'm in and the people that we have there, and really learn to steward all of that well. And so that's kind of our mission. That's the journey that we're on, is helping leaders and organizations and churches understand what does biblical servant leadership look like, right? What are those components? What is that foundation? How do we build that? How do we build it in ourselves, right? So how do we build and strengthen our foundation in our own life? How do we do that for other people? How do I use and see my gifts and talents? So what are those? And so I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. And so we use that kind of foundation, right? And we look at it from a biblical lens and we say, hey, here's your gifts, right? So here's your identity. Okay. So here's your rooted identity, whose you are, right? In Christ. You are an heir to the throne, right? You are a child of God. This is your identity. Okay. It's not your your disc profile, right? It's not your Myers-Briggs, right? It's not your Enneagram number. It's not it. Those are great. Okay. It's a tool, sure. But that's not your identity, right? This is your identity. These are your tools. And so we look at strengths and the way I approach it is like, when you have a craftsman, right? And they're making something by hand, they would have a specific tool mark. There would be these specific things that this one person would have, right? And so that is this. These are the tool marks of your creator. These are the way in which the way in which you've been crafted. And this is his fingerprint on his creation. And so we talk about this from the aspect of like how you use these, right? So what do you do with them? How do they fit? And then give people a language, especially in business, where you can have conversations about, hey, this is how I work the best. This is what I bring to the table. This is what I do here. This is how I do this here. And it helps from a personal level, it helps from an organizational level of being able to see your people and how they fit together, right? And build really effective teams. And so this is again, a lot of what it is that we do and how it is that we help.
So if people are interested in that, which I feel like a lot of people probably are, how do they get in contact with you or get started or that kind of stuff?
Yeah, great question. So we have a website. So it's www.abideleadership, all one word, .com. You can go there. We're on all the social media channels, so you can connect with us there and reach out. And again, we're here to help. So we have a bunch of different like coaching programs that we offer. We have some online stuff. We have some in-person stuff. And all of that is, all of those options are there because everybody kind of has a different speed, right? Some people are ready for this. Some people want this. And so we just want to really be of service. We want to be able to help. We want to be able to speak to where you are currently and where you want to go, and then build a map for you, like a roadmap, right, of how we're going to get you to that place.
I gotcha. I think that's super important because people typically think of those things separately. They think of leadership or personalities, or the big one that you mentioned, identity. I think that's a huge, we're in an identity crisis right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Huge identity crisis. And so I love that you guys are doing it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like I said, to me, it's one of those foundational things that we have to get right. And if I'm being honest, that was something my wife called out early when we were building stuff. She's like, we need to talk about this. This has to be a foundational key. This has to be a piece that we talk about and we help people identify and understand, right? Whose you are. It's not any of these other things. This is your identity. We have to get this right.
Definitely. I think all those other things can be kind of, number one, they can be distracting if it's the thing that you only focus on. But you can take stuff like that at the same time and use it as tools, like you said. But none of it matters if you don't know whose, your real identity. So I agree with you there. And I think what you're doing is really, really important. So I'm glad you guys are doing it.
Thank you.
So I will put those links in the description and we'll get that out to people. But Jesse, I have loved having you here. I am still a little jealous of how beautiful it is outside, but that's okay. We'll eventually get there. And
Yes.
man, I just want to say thank you for your time. Like truly, you spent some time with me. I don't take that lightly. It's the one thing that you can't get back. So I really do thank you for it. I appreciate you.
Oh my gosh, Ariel, I am so grateful for you. I'm so appreciative. Thank you so much for, again, allowing me the opportunity, right, to come and to share a little bit. We got to do this again, right?
Sure.
We got to do this again. And like I said, thank you so much for providing the space, because that's something too, right? Like it's so necessary, it's so needed. And so the fact that you're open and willing and just saying, hey, like let's do this, let's start a relationship, let's build this, let's let me help you, right? Help me help you, kind of a thing. And let's see where this goes. And so I'm so grateful, so grateful.
Definitely. Well, it's mutual. Stick with me, friend, and I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.